Hi, I'm iKia, and for today's video, I'm going to give you an in-depth guide to Countdown. As with all in-depth guides, this will coincide with a written guide, and that is going to be linked down below, of course, as well. And it lives in the guides folder of my Google Drive. And in there as well, there are many other guides. So if you're interested in any of the other subjects that are now up on the screen, you may want to go have a look there, and it will, of course, be linked as well. As always, with these in-depth guides, we'll go into several chapters. In this one, actually 3 instead of the normal 2. In the first one, I'll give the quick version, as we'll go through just the basics. Then comes the in-depth guide in a second chapter. And on this one, actually, we're going to do a third chapter, which is putting this all into practice and taking it actually into a countdown, where I explain during a countdown run, even more so, basically. Yeah, we'll go through this entirety of this guide, which is pretty hefty, actually. It turned out Countdown has a lot of things that you need to explain. But yeah, we'll go through it all step by step. And of course, everything will be time-stamped, and you can jump around as you wish. And of course, the written guide is available. So if you prefer that, you can go there and watch it for yourself. If you're watching this in the far future, double check that the last updated what that may be, because at some point maybe they might change things, and some parts may become irrelevant or change. So I try to keep this. I try to keep all my guides up to date. So with this one as well, let's jump in, shall we? And yeah, to do the short version first, because while this guide is pretty long and hefty, the knowledge is mostly there just in case you want to know, basically. Some of it is handy to know, especially how some of the buffs and such work. That will clear up usually a lot of questions that people have. But the quick version is basically this slide. This guide will expand the manufacturer's countdown, but you can get by just following your team and sticking together, not using skills in front of hunters, and waiting till the last 5 seconds to call an extraction. That line is basically the beginner version that the TL didn't, the TLDR or the TLDW of this. But we'll go a little bit deeper, because first off, I want to explain as well that, yeah, difficulties. So starting out, just matchmake on for challenging countdowns. That difficulty is akin to heroic, basically. It isn't too difficult, especially because heroic is a step up and requires at least a few people to have decent builds or get lucky with some of the buffs. Then we have the map, and the map is actually pretty simple. The insertion zones exist. There are 3 of them: 1 west, 1 north, 1 east. Each of the 2 subgroups will spawn in one of them, and then yeah, at that point, follow your team. Generally, what will happen is that, for instance, if you start west, you go and hit the hunters. So we go and hit the hunters first. But if you follow your team, generally that's what most teams will know to do. So follow them around, hit the hunters, hit other hunters, get all of the countermeasures done. And once you have done that, then you start going to the objectives, because we want these countermeasures to be flipped. As this part explains, the countermeasures are debuffs basically first, and then are buffs. And especially, for instance, some like this, the close range buff, will completely make it the easiest runs that you will have whenever you have that. This part of it goes into their in-depth. Of course, if you want the in-depth part, you can jump to those. And then, yeah, importantly, as I said as well in the beginning part, don't deploy skills in front of hunters. Hunters are special enemies, basically. They can hack our skills. Some can also deploy skills. These hunters aren't that. They don't actually have their own skills. They only hack ours. So there are, for instance, yeah, the summit hunters and stuff that have their own. But yeah, skills should basically not be used until you know what you're doing. Damaging skills are basically never worth it. Things like turrets and drones are basically never worth it. Some things like healing and stuff, if you're smart about it, you can use them, and we'll go into the in-depth part for those. Then, yeah, there are several types of the encounters, and especially Warhounds and Upload and SHC crates are pretty fast. Hostiles is medium fast. VIP is pretty slow. Generally, as it says here as well, it is generally avoided. You might have already, if you have done countdown, seen the text "No VIP," and yeah, that applies to this. Of course, we only need to do 2 out of 3 activities before we can go into, or encounters, I should say, before we can go into the main encounter. If one of them is the VIP, it will likely get skipped, and we will go for some of the other ones. Then, of course, we have the main encounter. So once we do 2 of the encounters, we'll get access to the main. Kelso will inform us that we can go there. And yeah, each of them is basically one set away that they just go. There isn't much randomization there, so once you actually learn them a little bit, it is pretty easy, and we'll go in depth, of course, into those in that parts. The other important part that a lot of people don't know about is the crates. There are actually lootable crates in Countdown. Here we're using a map by a Reddit member that goes by the name of Parsley Shogun. I'm using his map. I hope he's okay with it. I couldn't reach out and actually get him, but it is a map that is often used, and I hope he's okay with it. The reason to get these is that there are SSG calibration in there, and also, of course, extra loot. Especially this SSG calibrations, as anybody who has done some optimizations up to this point will know that. You run out of these, mostly you get them actually by watch points, but this can add in a little bit because a run can have 6 SHD calibrations for you on gym. If you do 2 encounters, or 2 encounters and the main encounter, you will get 3 small chests, that's 3, and then at the end of it, you'll get the big chest, which is another 3 for 6 total SHD calibrations, which is more than a project, for instance, even. So yeah, these are well worth getting, and we'll go into their positions and such in the in-depth part. But of course, you can just have this map basically open, and their positions are these yellow boxes here, and this is for instance reactor, administrations, and stuff. And yeah, you can kind of use this as your guide to know where they are. 2 out of 3 will be empty. Every time it's random, so every time that a run starts, whenever you go into one of the zones, one of these 3, for instance, in administrations, will be filled, and you basically have to go check. You just have to go check. One of them will be closed, and you can open it and get loot. The other 2 will appear opened already. And of course, the main box in each zone, once, if it is the main encounter, then you can, after the main encounter, you can open it and get the loot out of there and get your SHG calibrations as well. Then, of course, extraction is the big part of Countdown. Once you complete the main, we try to extract. A new 4-minute timer will start whenever extraction starts, once the main encounter is completed. We have 4 minutes to get the hell out of there, and we usually use all of it. One thing important again with there is that there are, again, 4 hunters for the extraction part. That means that no skills once again, but at least at these times you're guaranteed to be all together as a group. You should just do that together as a group. You should bunch up. You shouldn't rush in solo. Generally as well, again, the tip of sticking together as a group. And then, yeah, when you go there as well, there will be a sizable force of Black Tusk. You deal basically with the hunters and the Black Tusk. There are ways of dealing with them well, and we'll go a little bit into that as well in the in-depth parts. And then, yeah, once as well it is cleared, you usually wait till the last 5 seconds to call in extraction, because any of the teammates that enters the zone is allowed to call in the extraction. Usually you want to wait to the last 5 seconds, and that is because we will get subsequent choppers of Black Dust just coming down, which is more XP, more loot, and yeah, we usually just farm those. And that is important to know. So don't call in the extraction right away when you get into the zone, which is a newbie mistake to make, basically. And of course, if you don't know, you don't know, but now hopefully you know. Then the rewards wise, there is a vendor at the White House and in Haven where you can buy and sell. You can get actually some caches out of this, especially most people will go for the named item caches and the exotic caches, as both can be very valuable. The named item caches, for instance, for getting some of the DZ items, DZ/PvP items. And the exotic caches are, of course, very worth it if you need the exotics, or if you need the exotic components for upgrading or expertise grading items. And yeah, we'll go into some of those. There are also, of course, a set of 5 commendations now attached to Countdown that they came in towards the mid of last season. We'll go into how to get those as well. And then, yeah, a series of general tips. These, of course, will go into the in-depth parts. This concludes basically our short version of this, and yeah, it is basically that. It is, if we go all the way back up, it is just stick together and just following your team and sticking together, not using your skills in front of hunters, and waiting till the last 5 seconds to call it in. That can get you by, but of course, let's go in depth and discuss it fully. And to go into the in-depth part, we'll go segment by segment. Everything will be timestamped also per segment, so you can jump around if you wish to in this one. And yeah, what is Countdown? And indeed, as we said, Countdown is game mode around the Pentagon nuclear station. It is an off-map, off-site area. And yeah, it is 8-man content based around completing certain objectives and extracting within a time limit. There is a 15-minute and a 4-minute time limit, making at the max a 19-minute run. So you kind of know going into it how long it will take, because it'll likely be less than 20 minutes, including matchmaking. And yeah, in each run, we'll be facing one of the same 6 main factions as our main enemies, and we'll always face the Hunters and the Black Tusk at insertion and extraction, basically. And why we do it, it is very good for farming gear and weapons. It drops a ton of loot each run. It is inversely also pretty bad for XP. It gives you overall a level per run for 20 minutes. In the same hour of doing 3 runs and getting 3 levels in Countdown, you could get a lot more levels in other places. That's also why this isn't the end-all be-all, as some people claim it to be. Why would you do anything except Countdown? Because of XP and because of other loots, and also just for variety. You can matchmake for it, and actually just to briefly show where that is, if you just go to the map, from here, matchmake, Countdown, and then gives you a difficulty option. You pick one and you go in. Starting out, as we also discuss in here, you want to go with challenging, and yeah, challenging and heroic will be matchmade for. Normal and hard, not so much, because the difficulty is too low, the loot is too low. So challenging is usually the beginning of it. And yeah, it is very popular, so we likely get in quickly. Countdown and Summit both as well allow you to select targeted loot, allowing you to farm what you're after much more easily. To show that as well, if we just hover over either Summit or Countdown, they share the same targeted loot. So if we just hover over it in the bottom left, although actually I should go to the game here. In the bottom left, it says there, select targeted loot on either. If we press and hold whatever button is assigned to that, this list comes up. And from here, I can go, I want LMGs, and select that, and that will be both set for Countdown and for Summit. This is your personal loot. This is per person, and only you will get your loot. And yeah, all loot is personal if you did not know already to begin with. Going back to the guide again here. As we went in, there is the quick version as the start there, which is just to stick together, not use your skill in the front of hunters, and wait till the last 5 seconds to call it in. Going into a more in-depth version here, going on with difficulty. There are 4 difficulties, but in effect there are only 2. Challenging and heroic really are the only ones that get used and run. Technically, I have used hard here and there for farming purple gear, but yeah, I'm the outlier, not the rule. And yeah, challenging is just akin to just below heroic. As from the open world or missions. Heroic is more akin to and difficulty just above heroic. It's not legendary or anything, but enemies do require you to have a lot of damage output to kill them. And the damage of the enemies is quite low. It is set up in a specific way to be that way. They have a lot of armor and health, but their damage is actually much lower than any of the other content that we have, mostly because also it spawns a lot, and it's not trying to kill you, basically. It's trying to just give you a challenge. You can, of course, still very easily die, but their damage, especially if you're on something tanky like a BFE build or something akin to that, you will notice that, yeah, they don't hit that hard. And yeah, as for challenging, as a general difficulty to start at, you only need a few people to be competent and geared, whereas for heroic, you will need several people to know what they are doing to get it done. As at heroic, there's a decent requirement from the players to be geared and knowledgeable. And yeah, that is the case. Heroic, I generally don't go into even solo. I sometimes matchmake for heroic, but generally I only go into heroic if I have 2 or 3 teammates already. That way, at least we're stacking the deck towards getting it done. And then I'll matchmake with those allies with me to go into it. Yeah, let's continue on to the map. As the map is, of course, the big map down here, it is an offsite map. It has its own positioning and such. It does get reused as well for the Anderson Manhunt mission. So if you want to just go see the map, you can actually in that. And yeah, it consists of 6 zones as we have it here. Not all of them will be available on each run. There will be 3 minor ones targeted, and then 1 core or 1 main encounter selected. So at most, we'll be going into 4 of them. The main as well will not overlap with any of the others. So yeah, basically 4 zones will be there for each of the runs. Generally, we do 2 minor encounters and then go to the main encounter. Because doing that extra encounter is actually, it's not worthwhile rewards-wise, so we just skip it. It has 3 insertion zones, as we talk about here, and 3 countermeasures. The insertion zones are these little squares out here. One of the things to know as well is the teams will insert, especially now having gone back to how it's kind of supposed to work initially, it will be each of the subgroups will randomly spawn on of which there are 2 on 2 out of the 3 places. And one important thing to know as well is that then the extraction, if you for instance have the team spawning on west and north, the extraction will be east. It will be the location that wasn't used for insertion. So you can already, once the teams are in and pay attention, you can know where extraction is going to be before it happens. Furthermore, the best thing to do is try to link up. So generally, if the teams spawn west and east, you cannot really link up because the hunters are in between there. Either of the teams spawning north means that they have the decision to try to link up. So if the team spawns west, they can very easily link up. That is if the team spawn west and north, that's the easiest link up. If the team spawns north and east, what the northern team should do is actually go to their left. They'll be facing downwards, so they'll be heading this way. They can actually link up and then together hit all of the hunters. The benefit of that is that everybody will get all of the dog tags, and the requisitions, the countdown coins are mostly based on how many dog tags you get. So if you can link up both teams in any fashion, but mostly that means that one of the teams needs to spawn north, then you can actually get the full 158. In the past, of course, we had it where both teams would spawn together, and that was a non-issue. But this, at least as well, adds back a challenge of a 4-man team having to deal with hunters. And not all can, especially on heroic, bringing back a little bit of the challenge. So I'm not per se against it. And then, yeah, once in, we try to go for the 3 countermeasures. These 3 places are fixed. The countermeasures are not. They'll be from a set pool, as we'll go into in a second. But yeah, they'll be always in the same place together with the hunters. On challenging and heroic difficulty, those hunters will be all in the same place. On normal, actually, there's fewer hunters. There's only 2 hunters. So you don't have to deal with all of them. But of course, basically, you shouldn't be on normal unless you're just playing around. Yeah, let's go on into the countermeasures. The countermeasures are the big yellow boxes that are kind of guarded by the hunters. With a little console on them, you can interact with them and turn off or on, depending on how you want to see it, the countermeasure. The countermeasures basically start as a debuff and then become a buff. So that's the reason we do want to go for them. And yeah, each run will have 3 countermeasures at random. They'll be underneath your minimap. We'll see that as well. And when we go in there, I'll point it out. And what some of these are is very powerful. Some of them don't really matter at all. And yeah, some are basically fully useless. And both teams should go and try to get their countermeasures done and try to link up as well. The countermeasure list, especially, I'll point out, you can read through this at your own leisure through the guide or on the screen here now. The important ones are especially the damage ones. So there is a close range buff, which is this one. If you've ever been in Countdown and wondered, why am I doing way much more damage than I usually do? That's the close range buff. Close range buff is the strongest buff. It is very overpowered. But yeah, it does also require players to, of course, be in the close range, which seems to be under 15 meters. It's basically the same close range as a coyote would be. We also have a long range buff, which seems to be 20 meters and above, not 25. Although testing on it is kind of hard to do because, you know, enemies don't keep still that well. But this one as well is a pretty strong buff if you do get it. Same for the headshot. The headshot is also a pretty strong buff, not as much as for instance, yeah, the close range buff, but it is very noticeable that you do much more damage with headshots. Then we have a reload speed buff. This one is on the middle. It improves the reload speed, but of course that's not a big factor generally. We do have a crit chance increase, but with this as well, this seems to actually be crit chance and crit damage, but it doesn't seem to be a lot of it. And also, generally, we're already set up, especially on the crit chance side, to, you know, have the coyotes and hit 60 anyway. You can't go in assuming that you're going to get this, so we can't really like pre-prepare for this. Then if we, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. We have armor repair. This is just a little bit of armor regen. This one is okay. And then we go basically into a bunch of stuff that really doesn't matter except one. We do have the explosive damage. Generally, you shouldn't be using skills in Countdown just because you don't want to use them at the end when, or at the start where hunters are. Now, of course, skills such as foam and stuff are fine, but basically all of the explosive ones are going to be damaging skills. You generally want to avoid that. There is no real good reason to put those in front of hunters, for instance, at the end. Of course, you could swap just for the middle parts and then swap back, but generally we just avoid that and just shoot everything. Then we do have a very important debuff. This isn't important as a buff, but this is important as a debuff. Whenever you have this one, there are 2 separate biohazard signs. One is surrounded by shield, one isn't. The one without the shield around it, the big one, this disables any status effect until it is toggled, basically. You can't disorient them with the Scorpio, you can't foam them to the ground, the hunters especially. But if you were to leave this up, you couldn't do this to anybody. This one is not so much important as its buff, because once it becomes a buff, it's just a little bit of status effect increase. When this is active, though, yeah, it disables any and all ways that we use to keep the hunters a little bit more tame so we can kill them more easily. When this one is up, just be aware of it. Generally, it should only affect the hunters' fights, but then, yeah, you need to know that, yeah, if you're using a Scorpio, your Scorpio isn't going to do much against them. But then once it gets toggled, of course, then it's back to normal. The other one with the status effects, this one just is the resistances to it. With these, they will, for instance, have a shorter duration if they get foamed or such, but it isn't deadly. It isn't completely not there. Then we have also skill cooldowns, which can help a little bit and actually will recover, for instance, your hive, or revive hive and stuff even faster, making it even a little bit useful for red builds and stuff. And then we have skill damage and skill cooldown here, or skill cooldown reduction on kill. This kind of works as the skill tissues that you pick up. That doesn't really make that much of a difference. It isn't a lot for each kill, and especially for the builds that, for instance, would be using their skills fully. This isn't going to make that much of a big difference. And yeah, the skill damage increase is also quite tiny, so it's not even worth it, for instance, when this is there to actually go with some skill damage. Generally, we just don't care about it, and because of that, these are all unimportant buffs. It's not that they don't matter, it's just they are not important to how we play Countdown mostly. And then as well, hostile skill damage resistance. They just take more damage. Again, this actually seems to be a bigger deal than the skill damage, but I didn't really even test it as much. Let's go to the next segment, which is Hunters. And Hunters indeed next. So on challenging and heroic difficulties we care about, there are 4 Hunters at the initial insertion and then 4 at the extraction. They're like most Hunters as well in the game. They are usually elite enemies. This doesn't hold true, for instance, for some of the ones in some of the Manhunt missions. And they are not names. This does affect it because they are not as resistant, for instance, to specialization weapons, especially. And also don't have as high resistances as names generally do against CC, like foam and such. And yeah, they have the capabilities of a hunter, of jammer pulse, and to hack skills. They don't have their own skills, like the summit hunters do, but they will hack skills that are deployable. So things like, as I list here, hive, turrets, traps, etc., or have a presence in the game world. So things that have basically show up in the game world and kind of exist in the game world, where, for instance, foam and stuff is a projectile that really quickly reaches its target. Something like a firefly or a seeker or drones, they aren't deployed, but they do still have a presence in the game world. So all of those things can be hacked by them as well. So generally, you just want to avoid using that in front of them. They do need to go into cover and actually trigger this ability. So when they are engaged, they generally avoid doing that if they have more pressing issues at hand. But especially during extraction, there will be some hunters in the back. You'll be engaged with the Black Tusk more in front. If you try to send the flyer fly that way, they will usually get hacked and sent back your way. And yeah, there are skills that you can use. For instance, yeah, the sticky, the shields and stuff, of course, cannot be hacked. Pulses, all of those. Generally, you can just use those against them. Damaging skills and drones should never be used against them. And this is basically a never. There is no real reason to put a turret or anything in front of them. The likelihood of it getting hacked, even if you think that, oh, they're all engaged and they might not go in cover and hack them, the risk is still there, and it isn't worth it because they don't do that much damage against them anyway. Healing or buffing skills can be used. So for instance, putting a healing hive next to yourself and keeping an eye on it, if they hack it, it will only still heal within the circle that it had. That means that if you put your healing skill, or for instance, a healing hive next to your allies, but the enemies are far away and it does get hacked, you can then at that point just shoot it, but also they'll just be outside of the range of it, so it doesn't really matter for that. As we explained there, you just don't want them used against your team. So for instance, if the healing hive does have a few enemies inside of its range, it can be very annoying because it will heal them up. Also, when engaging them, it is important to try to position yourself in a way that you can have a clean firing path to them, and also try to leave space for others to do the same. Try not to move around too much once you have your position. In general, and avoid using your shield if you are not being fired upon, and even if you do use a shield, try to do so from the sides to not block your allies. This should be just general knowledge that I will impart here. Just don't body block too much, and especially I see a lot of people circle strafing kind of around the hunters and stuff, especially when they're not the one being engaged. So if you're the closest one, if you're running PFE and you're kind of in their face, sure. If you are 20 meters away and the hunter is definitely not going to target you, just hold a line, just so your allies, being predictable to your allies, basically, so that they can know to shoot past you quite easily. Any damage blocked is damage lost. Let's go on to the encounter types, and here will be quite quick, as there are basically 6 encounter types. They will be picked at 5 encounter types. There are 6 zones for later, that's how I get mixed up. But yeah, there are 5 encounter types. There's hostiles, there is the upload, there is the warhands, there's SHT and VIP. That's usually what we shorten them to. And hostiles generally is a lot of waves. It can actually be long, and especially if If in a big zone, it can actually be one of the longer encounters, but it isn't. It still is 2 waves shorter than VIP. Technically, if Hostiles is, for instance, in Cooling Tower and VIP is in something small like Containment, it could be an idea to go VIP, but generally just avoid VIP in general. Then we have Prevent the Hostile Upload, which can be done pretty quickly, and requires you to hack some laptops. Then some servers pop up. You shoot the servers, and that will initiate the last wave and the boss to spawn. We have then Warhounds. This is actually one of the fastest objectives. It is basically knocking out some servers. Then we deal with the Warhounds. There will be 3 Warhounds that are marked. You murder those. They will be immune up until that point, but actually being immune, if running Striker, you can actually stack up on immune things, including, for instance, as well, stacking up on SHD boxes and such. When the Warhounds are destroyed, the last wave will basically spawn next when it can, making Warhounds actually one of the fastest things, especially in some of the smaller zones. We do have as well security SHD crates. This is a fast objective if done right. So this requires the capture of those SHD crates that keep putting out skills, as they do, for instance, in you may have seen them in Summit or seen them in the Keener fight and stuff. This objective, importantly, this objective is only one where having multiple people in the objective makes it go faster. In no other place, and this actually holds true for outside of here, when you generally have a laptop to hack in Summit or missions and stuff, they don't go faster with multiple people in them. This is the only objective, both here and in Summit, where having multiple people in it makes it go faster. It is basically a tug of war effect, so the more people that you have in it and the fewer enemies will make it go faster. So getting in there quickly and kind of holding positions with the SHD crates is actually very important. With all of the other ones, it only matters if there's one person in the circle. And yeah, if done right, this can be done in seconds, because you just get enough people into both of the circles, get them really quickly, and then that spawns the last wave. And then yeah, we have Protect the VIP. The VIP has requires protecting the VIP. We usually just avoid this. We just go, you know, it might be a little bit overblown, because there are some situations where it might be better to pick the VIP. But it is generally just best avoided. And because of that, we just avoid the VIP. And I, even with this guide, will concur with that. Just generally avoid the VIP, and you'll, on average, be better off. There are certain very specific situations where you might have to go across the map and do a shorter thing, and the VIP would have been faster. But also, the VIP can also be downed and revived, but also he can be killed as well. But also can completely die if you don't revive him in the 30-second timer that gives you, especially against, for instance, something like the Outcast with the Rushers. He can die if nobody pays attention. He can fully die. He can be downed and then die. So we just avoid it. It can actually be good for proficiency because it has the most wave, because there is a difference between trying to get loot out of it and trying to just do it quickly. Overall, we tend to just choose to do it as quickly as possible, because we can just go do more runs that way. Let's go on to the main encounters. As each run, we will have one of the 6 zones be the main encounter. You can already actually, even before it highlights, you can know which one it is. The minor ones, of course, are lit up as you enter. The one that gets the kind of mission marker, as it would be in the rest of the game, that is the main objective. So you can kind of know where you're going to go for the main before it pops up. And also Kelso, actually, at the start, when she starts talking, she has a voice line dedicated to each of the encounters. So you will actually know from her voice line what the main is going to be. We won't go in depth into this, because this could be a guide onto its own of several dozen minutes. What we can say, though, is that there is no variance or order to those locations once they are the main. Of course, the minor encounters, there's basically the zone, and then it gets an encounter type into it. The main encounters, when they are in a zone, each of the 6 zones has basically their set route. So once you kind of learn them, you kind of know the way. I might in the future actually make a guide specifically for each of these, but for now we'll keep it quite simple as basically as well. Most of them are just zones to capture. None of the zones, again, as well, need more than one person in them. Just going towards the objective and doing the thing that it kind of tells you to do will actually get you done in time overall. Do try to keep in time an eye out on the timer and not leaving it till the last few minutes to get all of the activities done. And none of these are particularly difficult. One important one, as just to point out, is the turbine, where it has an unique-ish kind of mechanic, which is that it will have a sound bite or sound effect that will play of an electrical device kind of charging up, and the floor basically is lava. So you want to avoid being on the floor whenever that sound plays. Of the other ones, there is some steam happening and stuff like that, and you have to kind of run around and hit objectives, but nothing too hard. So we'll just leave that as there, but you can, of course, read through it if you want the in-depth parts of it. The one that I do want to spend some time on, as a lot of people I know don't understand this, is the crates. So every zone that is an encounter for that run will have a small black crate with loot available in it. This will be from a 3 random. This will give 3 random items. They will sometimes have a 4th targeted, but always also 1 SHD. The crate position will be from 3 crates. One will be randomly chosen as the crate to have loot for the small ones. And then once the main encounter completes, you can get the large orange crate, which has 6 to 8 items, sometimes an extra targeted item in there, and then also 3 SHD calibrations. This is one of the better sources for SHD calibrations, which are hard to get from other sources other than actually getting them from some of the projects give it, but all, of course, optimization caches and such give it. But then usually you spend mostly watch points to get SHD calibrations otherwise. But doing a lot of countdown can be good for that as well. But you do need to know where they are. So there are 3 fixed positions for the small crates in each zone. At random, one will be the one that is active and available to be looted. That one will also then look closed. The other 2 will look open. So even from a distance, you can tell which one they are, as long as you can have a line of sight to it. For the positions, consult this map guide made by user Parsley Shogun on Reddit, and linked to the Reddit post that this comes from. This map was made all the way back then, and it has been super useful to me now. I know all of the positions by heart, basically. Over time, you will learn them as well. This is for each of the 6 zones, so administration, laboratory, cooling, reactor, turbine, and containment. And kind of, this is north, so if you line up your compass, you will quite easily be able to kind of put this into what the zone will kind of look like. These yellow squares are the small black chests. So yeah, you need to kind of go around and look at all 3 of the positions. Usually someone will go and just pop them, so you'll just see loot. That's sometimes why I've seen loot lying around a black crate. Basically, they're the same type as, for instance, DZ uses. And then the main crate, of course, is only for the main objective. Consulting this map, having this maybe open on a phone or something, and then when you're going into there, just having a look when you're going into cooling, going like, hey, where is this thing, can help a lot. That's kind of how I started learning it as well. Over time, it will become second nature, but you do want to always go and get this. And this is also kind of the joke of Countdown always is, did I get the... and just the truth of it as well, as I quite often have a bad short-term memory and I'm kind of talking and forgetting, especially on streams, is that did I get the chest or didn't I get the chest? And then you just keep triple and double checking. Now, of course, if you know all of the positions, you can just go one by one by one. You also know that if, for instance, if you're going into cooling and it isn't this one, as this is the entrance on the left here, if it isn't this one and it isn't this one, then it's going to be the 3rd one. So you can, by deduction, kind of reach the conclusion of where the crate is going to be. And overall, just it will become second nature. but you definitely want to go and get them, especially as well in coordinated teams. We just call it out. So once we have found a crate, we just call the person that's found it. We'll call out where it is. We have our own kind of like call outs, but generally you can go with it's in the north, or it's the furthest one, or stuff like that. Yeah, let's head on over to extraction. And yeah, we are heading into extraction, so we have a 4-minute timer to explain this. Once the main encounter is completed, once the last enemy is killed for it, and the area is secured, extraction starts. Extraction is its own separate 4-minute timer, so you don't have the full 15 minutes to do the objectives and then extract. If you complete the main, even on a second remaining, which sometimes has happened, you get an additional 4 minutes. So this 4 minutes is just purely for extraction alone. During extraction, it is important that you do not die completely. So not getting downed is not an issue. Getting downed with a hive, especially as well, is not an issue as long as it isn't jammed or you aren't shocked. But yeah, so if you aren't just downed but completely die, you cannot be revived. You are dead, and you're basically, for all effects and purposes, done with that run. You only have the option basically at that point to just leave the countdown. You can also inspect your allies as they continue on the fight. And because of that, it is important to play it safe during that extraction. As well as keeping an eye on weakened state. So if you don't know what this is, when you are downed once and then picked up, on your buff bar, there's a 30-second weakened state. It is a red debuff icon. It is a heart with a strike through it. While that debuff is up, if you get downed again, you will die. You will not go into a down state, you will die. So knowing that, you should, once you get picked up, just play it a little bit extra safe. Because it is very easy to get, complacent and get down twice. And if that is in the weakened state, if you didn't wait out the time enough for that debuff to go, you will die. And that happens a lot to newer players. Also, during extraction, you will face 4 hunters in and near the extraction zone. This will, again, make it so that damage-based skills are basically off the table. You shouldn't use them. Healing and buff skills can be used, especially if you're doing it smart, and especially CC skills can actually be, of course, very useful. Foaming a hunter to the ground is one of the easiest ways to deal with them. Also, with the hunters is going to be a sizable force of Black Dust, independent of whatever faction you are fighting, because that could have been Black Dust as well. This part will always be Black Dust. And it is important to deal with them. They will be coming down from some of the choppers. And of course, especially things like their medics and their healing boxes can be very annoying. And if not dealt well with, can cause a lot of extra issues, especially on heroic. And you don't want them to basically get set up. Once the zone has been cleared, reinforcement Black Dust will come. There's basically choppers coming in, and this is generally as well. We just farm those choppers. We generally use them just for extra XP and loot. And the reason, this is the reason why we want to wait till the last 5 seconds to call the extraction in. So once any person that is within the extraction zone can actually fire up the flare and call in for extraction, making the timer for that start. You generally want to avoid doing that and just farm up this part, just because you get a few more kills and you get some few more loots in a very simple and easy way. And yeah, it is considered bad form to instantly call extractions in. So you should just know that and just wait for the rest. But also sometimes people, if it's below 5 seconds, it's perfectly fine. Below 10 seconds even, fine to call it in if you're feeling that maybe your allies might not. Let's go on to the rewards. And Countdown, as we were talking about earlier as well, is one of the best places to farm gear or weapons, as a lot of drops happen. If you go through it once, you will notice that during a run, you will come out with 50 to 60-ish items overall. It is, of course, variable and random, but, on average. This is because there are a lot of enemies, including a lot of named enemies, and as well, they are mostly elites, which does help with loot. With each zone as well, you will have several, sometimes named enemies with guaranteed loot, but also the crates giving more items, but also the hunters. The last 4 hunters during extraction will all drop 2 named items together with the option of them having extra targeted items alongside of that. Those named items are from the named pool, not from the named cache pool, for instance. They don't contain the DZ items. They're also not from targeted, so they don't actually, you can't use them for, if you're looking for a certain name, it doesn't really help with that. Of course, Countdown itself does, but not those hunters at the end. Together with that, you will also get a Countdown Requisition, and Countdown Requisition is the Countdown coins, as I call them generally. Is its currency. You can spend those on the Countdown vendor, and actually to show that in game, it is actually up over there. It is in the Rally Point Omaha, and yeah, this is just a simple vendor that has especially as well some exotic caches and some named item caches, and sometimes as well DZ named items in this 3rd slot. Going back to the guide, there's also one in Haven as well, which is in the back of it. Of note, important to know, is that the first 2 items, as we saw there, on the top, the named items, it will have always 3 named items. The first 2 are shared with Cassie, so if you ever are interested in those items, it is much better to just go to Cassie and you will get them for just normal currency, much more easily. The 3rd item is unique to the Countdown shop and can be a DZ PvP item, and regularly is. So this can be, for instance, a good way to, for instance, TDI card customs have been on there, which can be, of course, very useful. Some other DZ names that sometimes are useful, for instance, Matador or such, have been on there for sometimes. So you do want to check that, and that is the only item really worth getting as the item. Then, of course, your currency is best spent overall on exotic caches and on named caches. So, for instance, for me, I only really am interested in exotic caches just because I have only grading. If you are still doing expertise and doing proficiency grinding, it can be very useful to still use some named caches to get some of the DZ items. So you can just run them and make them proficient, or just donate them as well. And the amounts that you receive are based on the difficulty, and mostly on the amount of hunter duck decks picked up. Generally, if you get all 8 hunters, so in the past this would be a lot more, or last season this would be a lot more consistent, and do 2 minor and 1 main encounter, so just going the quick route, just the normal route as most people would see it, and successfully extract, because all of those things matter. Then on challenging, you will get 158 coins. On heroic, you will get 208. This is the reason as well. If heroic, especially if you're in a consistent group and you can consistently get it done, and it's not an issue, which, for instance, as well, if I'm quite often with on stream, we might sometimes reach this 8 people points, or even like 6 or 7, and we can consistently do heroics. It is much better to just do the heroics because, yeah, you get more coins out of it. Also, for reference, doing the 3rd optional minor encounter will only increase those amounts by 2 to 160 and 210, because the encounters are actually not that important for the amount of rewards received. And the way that as well extraction works, extraction is also important. If you die or wipe and other ways fail to extract, you will only receive half these amounts. What extraction actually does is double the amount. So it would actually technically be half of these amounts. So 104, for instance, here for heroic. That is then, if you do successfully extract, gets upgraded to 208. So for instance, if we were to fail to flare and not call in extraction, which absolutely has never happened, totally never. Not even when sometimes we were with 8 people on comms together. When that totally never happened, that thing that never happened would give us 104 coins, for instance, here. And that time we did get for 104 coins, if it ever had happened, which it, of course, didn't. So yeah, extraction, getting extracted is important as well. Same if, for instance, if you run out and try to get your loot and you fail to get the rope. Let's go on to the commendations. The commendations are actually pretty simple. You can actually just read up on the guide here. We'll just go through them real quickly because they're not that hard. The countdown cool, you just need to do get the cooling tower as your main objective and just do it quickly. That is under 5 minutes is actually trivial to do, as this is one of the faster ones anyway. Countdown shocker for neutralizing 24 shocked enemies. This is what it generally wants it maybe to be done in the turbine thing, where enemies will get shocked just by the effect as well. But you can just run Elma or shock trap or a dozen different ways of getting shock to happen. But overall, if you run enough countdowns, you'll accidentally basically do this. We have Big Spender for spending 1,000 countdown currency. This is basically the same as 6.5 runs of challenging or 5 runs of heroic, just under 5 runs of heroic, with getting the full hunters, which of course doesn't always happen. So overall, this will not be something difficult. I have at this point likely spent in upwards of 100K likely on the countdown vendors. Then we have countdown counter, which is for deactivating one of each type of the countermeasures. So this is with that list of the countermeasures upstairs. You can maybe just use that to kind of sign them off. But also what I did in the end, as a lot of people went in and actually did this on normal, for instance, running around and getting just running it solo on normal and getting it done. I in the end didn't. I just went out of my way to be quickly at the buttons, be the person pushing them, because that is the important part of this. Only the person that actually interacts with the countermeasure will actually receive credit for this. So it isn't just being there. You need to be pushing those buttons. So yeah, you could go out of your way and copy that list maybe upstairs there and try to to tag them off as you go. Overall, I just did it just by doing a lot of countdown runs, and eventually it was just like, oh, hey, I did it, and didn't even notice, and then just claimed it. Then we have a countdown supply, which is that you want to share 20 items within a countdown. Yeah, this isn't a hard one. You just pick up a lot of items and you just share them. Especially sharing, for instance, the names at the end will make it so that people will likely pick them up and use them for proficiency. But it's also important to know that they don't need to pick it up, even if they deconstruct it on the ground. It doesn't matter. Of course, if you are with in countdown with some allies, it's even easier. You can just rotate around. This one definitely isn't hard either. You just pick up a bunch of junk items and just drop them on the ground. Other people, even if they don't want them, will if they're not valuable to you, might pick them up still, even for proficiency and stuff, or might just deconstruct them for resources. You'll get through this pretty quickly as long as you basically share 20 items. Let's go on to the last section, which is pretty long, which is the general tips. And last, but definitely not least, we'll go into some of the general tips. And of course, this becomes basically the segment where I give you only the tips. And yeah, we'll just go through them one by one. Overall, the general difficulty to go with is challenging. Heroic does require several people to be geared and know what they are doing to be successful, making heroic only worth it if you can get consistent completions, as we talked about earlier. If you can consistently complete heroic, there's no reason to not do it on heroic. Time-wise, it takes a little bit per run, but you get also better loot out of it, as the loot scaling does actually matter upon difficulty, how good your loot is. It isn't too big of a difference, but it's definitely there and noticeable. Then as well, yeah, again, hunters have the ability to hack skills, making it dangerous to use any damaging skill at all. And basically not even worth attempting to do so. With healing and boosting skill, it depends on positioning and what skills they are. If you place your hive, your booster hive, your healing hive out of their range, they might still hack it, but it will still not heal them or boost them. As well, for instance, things like decoys and stuff, if you put it in front of them, even if they hack them, like, what does that mean? Your allies were just as likely to shoot your friendly decoy as they are the enemy decoy. But of course, things like a stinger hive or a mortar or a turret or an attack hive or attack drone being hacked can be very dangerous. For instance, yeah, as well, a healing hive should be deployed far enough that it's, even if it is hacked, it does not heal. The majority of enemies are elites, and you can use this to your advantage because just a few of them on each run will be veterans or reds, and meaning that protection from elite mods and builds can work decently. Following up this video, I'll actually go into a few builds as well that I enjoy for Countdown, and we'll see a few PFEs in there definitely. And yeah, overall, the better rewards to get are named item caches and exotic caches. Starting out, named item caches will be your main source of DZ items to have most of them, or so you can proficient them. Later on, exotic components become the main tool to expertise grade items up, and thus they become very valuable. The only other item worth anything are if the third item, the third named item, is a DZ item, so that you can get that, or legacy caches as well need to be pointed out. And that is just really only if you need a piece of system corruption. This can be an easy way to get a piece of system corruption. Well, not easy because you need a ton of them generally, but yeah, just to not leave out that system corruption is in legacy caches, even though the legacy caches, as we go on in seasons, are more and more bloated. And yeah, once you know what you're doing, communicating can be very useful. Just typing out the encounters to go for into the chat, for instance, can be an easy way to make sure everybody lemmings to the right objective. And telling people to not rush it during extraction and wait for the team to catch up can also save agents and or frustration. One thing I generally try to do, although I've been bad at it more recently, is to always put into the chat. And it doesn't actually matter if you put it into raid chat or group chat. Both of the chats are the same thing. Both groups will also see the group chat. What encounters we're going for. And that makes it so that basically, yeah, everybody kind of goes in the same direction. And as well, if a few people kind of leave quickly at the end of a main objective towards extraction, just typing out, hey, wait for the team, makes it so that they will likely, if they read that and comply, they might wait for the team, and we can actually go in as a blob, which for especially extraction, if you can become one big blob of agents that quickly kills, instead of a string of agents where one by one you just get fed into the hunters, yeah, you will have a much better time going in as a blob. And yeah, that goes into here as well. As always, stick together as a big blob. This means that even if you disagree with the team, for instance, if most of the team runs into a VIP encounter, then it is better for everyone to make the wrong choice together over splitting up the team and taking longer. If 6 of the players, 6 out of the 8, lemming into the VIP, and you can't, yelling out no VIP in the chat doesn't convince them to not do so, it is better to just follow them in and just complete the objective that most people are on. It's better to make the wrong choice altogether rather than splitting up and half the people doing the wrong choice and half the people doing the right choice, because at the end of the day, you just need 2 minors to be completed. It does, VIP will take longer, but it will likely not cause you to fail. And as well here again, sticking together is extra important for extraction. Bunching up and going in all together will lead to success a lot more consistently than when 1 or 2 people rush in by themselves, as we've all often seen, likely, especially if you've done a ton of countdowns. Even if they manage to not get themselves killed, they will scatter the hunters and let the Black Tusk get set up with their healing boxes and such. Having to not deal with the Black Tusk being already having their overheals on and being ready to send drones our way and being set up to send airbursts our way makes it a lot easier. Going together all in as one big blob at the end is one of the most important things, and one of those things that if it turns into a string of agents of everybody being kind of spread out and not one blob existing, that is the most consistent thing that I have seen and gone like, oh, this is going to go wrong, and oftentimes then it has gone wrong. Here as well as pay attention to the objectives and timers. It is easy to become a headless chicken and just run around and shoot, but you also need to keep an eye out on the time. While not often an issue, it can become one if no one pays attention to the objective. Furthermore, pay attention to what the objective is. If it is a zone to capture, then once you start it, stay in the zone to actually capture it. Leaving it can be double bad, as someone else may have gone for it, but they saw you go for it and went for other objectives. This is one of those consistency things where just it is important to just try to go for the objectives. Sometimes as well, it is fine, and I do it the same as well. I just look a little bit at what the objectives are, how deep we are into them, and go like, the team is getting them. I'll just leave it to them. I'll just run and gun. I'll be a headless chicken, as I usually call it. But yeah, the timer is a factor. Not often. If you're, it just needs a few good players to make sure that the timer never becomes an issue. But especially, of course, starting out, you might be in a group where you are new and you're with players which are either new or bad. And there are some times where the time becomes an issue. Same as well with extraction, where you want to call it in, before the timer expires, which definitely I've never happened to me. That's false news. But yeah, as well, objective-wise, if you start an objective, I have quite often been burned by seeing going, okay, that guy's going for that one, I'll go for the other one, and then I get my one, but then they start theirs and get out of the zone. If you start an objective, it's best to just also be the person that then stays in it. And then as well, only one person in most objectives outside of, all the objectives that aren't SHD, SHD crates, if there's one person in it, that's enough. If you see them standing there, kind of being obvious that they're going to stay there. So for instance, what I do actually is do an emote. I usually, just bring up the Zen and then just go like, people will kind of get the gist that they can move on and then get other objectives. Also it should always be your goal to get as many of the crates as you can. Also getting them early so others of your team see them as well. Even if they don't know about the crates, they will just go for the loot. As it is one of the better sources for SHG collaborations. While it is only average of 6 per runs, it adds up over time. Getting these boxes quickly, especially for the people that, for the others that don't know, gives them a chance to actually, they will not know what is happening, but they'll just go for the loot, get the SHG collaborations as well. And yeah, as always, if you need more of me, you can head over to that link. Let's go on over to the conclusion. And indeed, we will conclude it here, even though in the intro I said we were going to do 3 chapters. Going through this, it became obviously clear that that would be a little bit too long. So I'm going to move that 3rd chapter of doing runs. We'll do that separately as a second part of this in-depth guide. And we'll go actually likely maybe even into several runs and where I'll just explain while doing, basically. After that one as well, we'll go actually into a video of some of my preferred countdown builds, because of course, together with knowing how to play countdown, then you also, it might be beneficial to know a few good countdown builds. So yeah, that will be all forthcoming. And yeah, as we talked through in this guide, countdown can be one of those contents that can be very handy to know, and especially knowing the ins and outs of it. It is very simple to learn, of course, you just follow others. I'm hoping though with some of this guide that you may understand it a little bit better, because there's always a lot of questions around countdown as to, for instance, why no VIP? And hey, how do those crates work? And also, hey, why am I sometimes doing way too much damage? In the in-depth parts of this, I hope I have answered most of those questions and hopefully made a little bit of a better countdown player out of you. So yeah, thank you for joining me for this one. And if you did enjoy this one, if you're willing to help out, doing any and all of the algorithm things down below is very helpful to me. And I hope to see you in the future parts of this countdown guide, basically, as we'll go into a little bit of actually playing it and also then into some of the builds that I enjoy for it. So yeah, I hope you join me for those. But for now, as always, have a good night.